Kyle in Florida. Kyle, what can we do for you tonight?
Hey there. I was just wondering, in the absence of legality, what sorts of resources exist to find, I don't know, organizations or employers that treat sex workers fairly and sort of maximize the safety for the client and the sex worker?
Yeah, I think for most people, it's just like gaining an awareness of where to go to find sex workers and to do so safely. Mostly what you should be doing is finding individual sex workers and then finding what organizations or groups they work with and what places they advertise on. So the social media platforms where sex workers can still exist, largely places like Twitter and Reddit, that haven't removed us from the platform entirely. Finding an individual sex worker who you like, who seems like someone who's posting frequently enough that you're pretty damn sure this is a real person, finding out from there where they advertise, whether that's through like a link tree that's attached to their bio, or whether that's through things they're posting, and then tracking back from there is your best bet, rather than relying on like search engines or word of mouth and random people you find. And like, God forbid you rely on a forum of clients, because those places, the kinds of people who post in them, they tend to be cesspits. It tends to be people who are looking to get like the absolute cheapest prices and the people in the most vulnerable situations on those places. Looking for individual independent sex workers and then tracking back from there is probably your best bet in terms of finding the people who are working for themselves and not being abused, and also finding people in a way that keeps you safe.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope that helps. Thanks so much for calling.
All right. Take care.
I was kind of thinking earlier this week about what I think maybe Kyle was getting at, was that when you decriminalize sex work, you also give them the ability to organize, sort of like a labor union, or like, again, I'm a tradesperson, so we have professional organizations that are not regulated by the government. Like, you don't need the government has nothing to do with you being ticketed, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a private group that gives you that that accreditation. So I think, what do you think about that, Jack? Would that work, like some form of organized group of sex workers working together to keep each other safe? Would that work?
Yeah, I mean, there are already groups just like that in various places, depending on what legal model they have. So in the UK, like there's the United Sex Workers Union, which is like the United Workers Union in general. Like they have a kind of an offshoot for sex workers specifically, which is affiliated with like a lot of these groups. And that's a way that you can get help. And that obviously is a thing that can only apply here because it is both legal to sell and buy sex. But the problem these unions come across here is that because there are still loads of laws restricting things here, like brothels, like brothel keeping is illegal, which means two people working together from the same building is automatically illegal. So if I sell sex from my house and my friend sells sex from my house, now we're breaking the law and we can do years in prison, which means that unions can't help out with brothel keeping because that would be breaking the law, but they can help you out on an independent basis. Right. And they can have us all meet and talk about these things. And that already does a ton of good. If we could also do that with the brothels that exist here, and we could also arrange these things together to have our own groups that are like planning out places to work, this kind of thing, that would help a ton. In terms of like the US, you have these same kinds of things, but much more underground than they are in the UK because of the laws in the US being even more restrictive, far more than they are in the UK. But in both the US and in the UK, you have mutual aid funds that sex workers have. I'm pretty sure that Swarm has a mutual aid fund. We have groups like Scott Pep, Umbrella Lane, where you can find links to these kind of various mutual aid funds through them, which are sometimes affiliated with various sex worker unions. I mean, yeah, that stuff's really important. And I think you see that the more we take away criminalization, even before we get to full decriminalization, you start to see these unions crop up all of a sudden because they reach a point where they're able to. But the criminalization will affect what those unions can do for you. So it would be like if elements of your field were illegal, but other parts weren't, your union would be able to help you with the stuff that's legal, but everything else, you're kind of on your own suddenly.
Yeah, I understand. That's a very curious situation. And the other thing is too, is once it is more decriminalized, you're also giving sex workers access to benefits programs, financial services, and other things that a lot of people just take for granted. So that's just another reason why we need to move away from these half measures, I think.
Yeah, I think it does become apparent when you think about stuff like that, because what you just reminded me of is we have at-risk groups for the coronavirus vaccine, right? This is probably something that actually shows very starkly what the problem with legalization is versus decriminalization.
Yes.
Is that if you have sex work being legalized, now only registered sex workers, who are already the people with more privilege in the situation, generally speaking, would be the ones able to sign up for programs that would allow sex workers to get the vaccine sooner. If you're fully decriminalized and no one has to register, now all you do is say, I'm a sex worker, and now you can get the vaccine sooner, which means all sex workers, regardless of how marginalized they are, regardless of how recently they started, can get access to that vaccine. And that applies to like tons of different things. But that particularly is something I thought about, because it's really hard here to get the coronavirus vaccine as a sex worker if that is your like point of needing it sooner. Like you have to go through a bunch of different channels and you still might not get it any sooner than anyone else in your age bracket. And if you have decrim versus legalization, it's going to change things a lot.
It's an excellent point.